3 Bone-chilling real nighttime road horror stories, version 1. Story 1. It was a dark and chilly night as I embarked on a long, solitary drive from New York to North Carolina for 2 job interviews. The thought of leaving my dreary job behind and starting fresh in the South kept me going. With corporate office positions promising great benefits and salaries, it was a chance to turn my life around. Plus, the prospect of better weather than New York added to the appeal. The journey began late on a Thursday night. Immediately after I left work, I rushed home to gather my belongings and say my goodbyes to family. The road stretched ahead, promising a tiresome 8+ hour drive, with an estimated arrival time of around 2 a.m. To stay alert, I consumed 3 cups of coffee during the initial hours of driving. However, fatigue was already gnawing at me. No amount of caffeine could combat my exhaustion, given the lack of sleep the previous night, compounded by the stress of the impending interviews and a grueling workday. As the night deepened, the highway grew deserted, save for a few sporadic vehicles. Fatigue began to weigh heavily on me, and I struggled to keep my eyes open. The majority of the journey was behind me, but my eyelids felt like lead. Suddenly, I spotted something inexplicable. On the side of the highway stood a man in a suit, motionless, not walking or moving, his gaze fixed on my approaching car. I muttered in disbelief, wondering why a man would be standing on a highway in the middle of the night, dressed in a suit. My mind concocted various explanations to divert my thoughts from fatigue. Then, something utterly chilling occurred. Not more than 10 minutes later, I spotted another man in a suit standing on the side of the road, just as motionless as the first, facing my car. Puzzled and increasingly anxious, I considered pulling over to offer assistance or inquire about their well-being. But as I moved onto the shoulder, I glanced in the rearview mirror and turned around, only to find the second man had vanished into thin air. My heart raced as I pressed on the accelerator, rejoining the road. Overwhelmed by fear and exhaustion, I decided to stop for another cup of coffee. With an hour and a half left to my destination, I pulled into the nearest rest area. While sipping my coffee, I spotted the man in the suit once more, standing beneath a lamppost. This time, I had a clearer view of his face, a middle-aged white man with short, dark brown hair, a clean-shaven face, and an eerie expression. He was once again facing my car, intensifying my fear. With unease growing, I hastily restarted the car and left the rest area without looking back. The coffee had failed to revive me, and I felt myself teetering on the edge of sleep deprivation. Desperation led me to pull off the highway and park in a random, desolate parking lot. I reclined the seat and tried to sleep, though the empty lot filled me with dread, fearing the man in the suit's reappearance. As I drifted towards sleep, something jolted me awake. My eyes shot open, scanning the area around my car. Paranoia gripped me, and I glanced out each window, ensuring I was alone. Finally, I peered into the rearview mirror and, for a brief, horrifying moment, saw a figure in the back seat, an eerie silhouette of the man in the suit. I reacted instinctively, screaming and tumbling out of the car, fearing for my life. I continued to scream until my senses returned, revealing an empty back seat. My exhausted mind had played cruel tricks on me throughout the night, fabricating the man in the suit as a manifestation of my stress and fear. Though the rational explanation soothed my nerves. The ordeal remained a nightmarish experience. Determined to complete my journey, I resumed driving, heart racing, and reached the hotel where I fell into an exhausted slumber. The following day brought the interviews, and my nerves persisted. In a strange twist, my second interviewer bore an uncanny resemblance to the imagined man in the suit from the night before, further rattling my composure. Despite my nerves, I managed to secure the job, and I now reside in North Carolina. But the memory of that haunting night still lingers. Story 2. Late one night, I found myself driving through the desolate roads of Clearfield County, Pennsylvania, trying to evade the traffic and beat an impending blizzard. My car's radio played my favorite podcast as I navigated the near-midnight darkness. Suddenly, a warning ding echoed through the car, signaling low fuel. I quickly located the nearest gas station on my Maps app and pulled into it. A small, isolated place surrounded by dense woods. As I parked beside a dilapidated pickup truck being filled by a man, I couldn't help but notice his watchful gaze on me as I entered the gas station's shop. Inside, I purchased a coffee and prepaid for my gas with cash. However, upon returning to my car, I noticed the man had left in his pickup truck. Just a few minutes after beginning to fill my tank, another warning ding sounded, indicating a low tire pressure. The car felt unstable, and I rolled down a window to confirm a flat tire. Baffled, I hadn't hit anything to cause it. The thought crossed my mind that the man from the gas station might have been responsible, but I dismissed it as paranoia. I reached for my phone to call my roadside assistance company when I heard an approaching vehicle. Oddly, I couldn't see any headlights, just the engine noise in the darkness. Then, abruptly, the engine noise ceased, and an eerie silence returned. Suspicion gnawed at me as I fetched my toolbox from the trunk to investigate. To be safe, I grabbed my dad's SOS flashlight and switched it on. I pointed the flashlight down the road, and its beam revealed a pickup truck parked about 200 feet away. It was the same one I'd seen at the gas station earlier. I gasped and retreated, phoning 911 to report the flat tire and the suspicious pickup truck nearby. The dispatcher instructed me to stay hidden in the woods, asking if the man was armed, but the call disconnected due to poor reception. I waited anxiously, hoping for a call back, but my phone's signal remained weak. Then, I heard the sound of another car approaching, slowing down near my location. Voices followed, with two men conversing. In fear, I crept closer to the edge of the woods, hoping to identify them. My heart raced as I saw the man from the pickup truck talking to another person in a separate truck. Overhearing their conversation, I realized the man was crafting a deceitful story about my flat tire. Without hesitation, I rushed into the road, screaming for help and declaring my lack of connection to the man. Both men turned their attention toward me. The man from the pickup truck seemed genuinely disturbed by my revelation. He quickly retreated to his vehicle and drove off. The other man approached me, examined my flat tire, and offered a ride into town. I explained that the police were on their way, and soon enough, a patrol car arrived at the scene, with the pickup driver corroborating my account. The officer took my information while we waited for the roadside assistance service. The tow truck eventually arrived, and the driver transported me to a nearby shop where my dad picked me up. I never received any updates from the police regarding the investigation, leaving the unsettling feeling that my potential abductor had escaped capture by a hair's breadth. Story 3. It was a night of unspeakable horror, one that still haunts me to this day, sending shivers down my spine whenever I recall the chilling events that transpired. At 28 years old, I often traveled to visit my boyfriend Todd, who lived in a different state. Our visits alternated, but this time, I was headed to Todd's place for a week during winter break. I packed my belongings and embarked on the journey in my sister's old Hyundai Sonata, a vehicle ill-suited for snowy conditions. The night was dark and the snowfall heavy, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as I made my way through the desolate roads of an unfamiliar area. The blizzard warnings had been a cause for concern, but Todd and I decided it was better to brave the inclement weather than risk even worse conditions the following day. After a brief stop at a diner for a sandwich and coffee, a friendly waitress advised me against continuing my journey given the worsening snowfall. She recommended a few local hotels and motels for a safe overnight stay. A stranger at the bar, whom I later learned was named Toby, overheard our conversation and suggested a nearby motel that was both affordable and conveniently located just up the road. Feeling grateful for the advice, I input the motel's name into my phone's GPS, revealing that it was a mere 5 minutes away. Trusting Toby's recommendation, I made my way to the motel. The motel itself appeared modest and budget-friendly, which suited my needs perfectly. I approached the front desk and secured a room for the night, paying around $50. The room was compact, adorned with tacky wallpaper, and furnished with a queen-sized bed and red carpet. It wasn't luxurious, but it would suffice for a brief, overnight stay. Eager to connect with Todd and update him on my progress, I attempted to FaceTime him. Unfortunately, the spotty reception made our conversation challenging, as video freezes and audio dropouts plagued our communication. Frustrated, but relieved to have at least conveyed my safety, Todd and I switched to texting. It was during this exchange that I heard a mysterious noise emanate from the bathroom. My heart raced as I realized that the bathroom door was now closed. Panic set in as I couldn't recall whether I had left it open. I hastily texted Todd about the strange occurrence, my fear intensifying by the second. Following Todd's advice, I ventured to the bathroom door with the key in hand. My apprehension grew as I tested the doorknob and discovered that the bathroom door was indeed closed. Fear began to grip me as I realized that my room might not be as secure as I thought. Summoning every ounce of courage, I approached the front desk to inquire about the room's locking mechanism. The clerk pointed to a traditional twisting lock on the door, controlled by either the key from the outside or the knob from the inside. I left the door slightly ajar while I sought clarification, an action that would later haunt me. Returning to my room, I anxiously pushed the door open and scanned the vicinity. That's when I noticed a set of fresh footprints leading to my room from the parking lot. These tracks originated from the car I had noticed earlier, parked nearby with someone inside. I hurriedly shut the door, growing increasingly alarmed. With a pounding heart, I rushed to the front desk and tearfully informed the clerk of an intruder in my room. His response was far from reassuring. Instead of contacting the police, he muttered something in another language and made a phone call to someone who arrived at the scene a short while later, the newcomer was a large, imposing figure who didn't speak English. Although I couldn't comprehend their conversation, the front desk worker suggested relocating me to another room. Attempting to placate my escalating fear, I accepted the offer out of sheer necessity, as I had no alternative place to stay. The two men assisted me in moving my belongings to the new room. Their actions were of some comfort, but my anxiety lingered. I slept fitfully that night, haunted by the thought of an intruder and the unsettling realization that the motel clerk had likely prioritized avoiding negative attention over my safety. In the morning, I was relieved to find the roads somewhat plowed, allowing me to continue my journey to thoughts. Looking back on that night, I could no longer trust strangers, my faith shattered by the terrifying ordeal that had unfolded.